Good morning, students. This session on Electro-Tech Shiksha is a medium through which we are going to revise certain important concepts and areas of MBA second semester financial management. Now we know that the function of a finance manager is first to raise the money from the market, which is he has to plan for the finance. So he has to think about from where he can raise the finance. So that is the finance activity or the financing activity. Now he can raise money by way of equity share capital, which are the sources of finance. He can raise money by way of preference share capital. The finance manager can go for bank loans, which is another source of finance, can go for bonds and debentures, on which the company has to pay a fixed rate of interest to the bond and debenture holders. The next function of the finance manager is the investing function. He has raised the money from these various sources, having a mix of capital, a debt equity mix. Now he is going to invest in various capital budgeting projects, which are long term, investing in plant and machinery, and also day to day running of business for which working capital provision is required. And the third function of the finance manager is profit planning, because he has to earn the profit and give dividend to the equity and the preference shareholders. Now, what does financial management attains through these functions of the finance manager, that is financing function, investing function, and profit planning? A goal of financial management through these functions of the financial manager, the goal of finance management is value maximization or the wealth maximization of the shareholders. This is the goal of finance, which the finance manager tries to attain using the functions. Now, how the wealth of the value will be maximized? The shareholders' wealth or the value will be maximized only when the share prices goes up in the market. They are buying shares at a certain price, and when the price of the shares are going up in the market, they can get the capital gain. So the objective of the finance manager is through these functions, he can develop a positive value of the firm, the value of the company, positive NPV, so that it creates value to the owners of the company, which is by way of value maximization or wealth maximization. Profit is a function of finance, but the goal of finance is the value or the wealth maximization of the shareholders, who are the true owners of the company. So this is the function of finance management, and the sources of finance which is there, like equity share capital, who are the true owners of the company. We can give them dividend only when there is a profit in the company, and they can participate in the annual general meeting and can give vote. Preference shareholders, the second source of finance, carries a fixed rate, let's say 8% or 9%, and every year they will be getting this dividend. They may participate in the AGM only of their dividend in a year for more than 2 years. Bank loans, you have to pay EMIs and a fixed rate, and the bond and debentures also carry a fixed rate, 8 or 9%. So the bond or debenture, if you can earn more rate of return, which is the objective of leverage, we can pass on the extra benefit to the equity shareholders by way of more dividend earnings. So in our syllabus, chapter number 1 and chapter number 2, which we have already done, if you see, is what is the goal or objective of finance. The goal or objective of finance is value maximization or wealth maximization of the shareholders. What is the function of finance? The function of the finance manager is financing, investing, and profit planning and dividend. And what are the sources of finance? The sources of finance are a mix of equity and debt. And as a result, our subsequent chapters like cost of capital, cost of preference share, cost of debenture, cost of equity, weighted average cost of capital, and leverage are dependent on this source of finance. So today we are going to revise the leverage chapter. Now what is leverage? Leverage we mean is like a lever which is actually utilized in order to raise a particular load or a structure. So similarly, in case of leverage, the company can utilize the fixed costs which are there in order to magnify its earnings. So leverage are of three types. The first type of leverage that you will have to know is known as the operating leverage. Operating leverage, the equation for operating leverage is depending upon whether we are having a 1-year data or a 2-year data, the degree of operating leverage or the operating leverage needs to be computed. The operating leverage is contribution by EBIT, earnings before interest and taxes, if we are having a 1-year data. If we are having a 2-year data, then we are going to calculate what is known as the degree of operating leverage. And what is the degree of operating leverage? The degree of operating leverage can be calculated if we have a 2-year data like 2019 and 2020 data. It will be the percentage change in EBIT by percentage change in sales. Now, how does the operating leverage helps us? The operating leverage is that the company is utilizing fixed cost in order to magnify its earnings. The second set of leverage is known as financial leverage, and the degree of financial leverage. Here also, depending upon the data, whether we have a 1-year data or a 2-year data, the equations will be there. If you have a 1-year data, then in that case, the financial leverage is going to be earnings before interest and tax by EBT, which is earnings before tax, EBT. But if we have a 2-year data, then we'll have to compute the degree of financial leverage, which is percentage change in earnings per share. So you'll have to find out what is the percentage change in the EPS by the percentage change in EBIT. Percentage change in EBIT. What is financial leverage? As we have just now seen that there are various sources of finance: equity, pref, and debt. So debenture holders and bond holders are paid a fixed rate of return. So if we have a debt equity ratio where more debt and debt are used in the capital structure, the extra profit beyond the interest on debenture and bond that we are paying, we can pass on this benefit to the equity shareholders. And that is why it is known as financial leverage. The third set of leverage that we need to know is known as the combined leverage. Now, combined leverage is actually the multiplication of operating leverage with financial leverage and the multiplication of degree of operating leverage with the degree of financial leverage. So we just need to remember these 4 sets of equation in order to calculate the leverage of a company. So what is going to be the combined leverage? Let us consider that only 1-year data is given. So these are the equation if it is a 1-year data for operating leverage and financial leverage. So if we multiply, we'll get the combined leverage which is operating leverage into financial leverage. So you will see that it is contribution by EBIT into EBIT by EBT. So EBIT and EBIT gets cancelled out and it is C by EBT, which is the equation for the combined leverage. C by EBT. Now if it is a 2-year data, then we'll be using the degree of operating leverage and the degree of financial leverage. So if we multiply, we'll get the degree of combined leverage, which is DCL, which is percentage change in EPS by percentage change in sales. Now let us see why this is so important. There are two things we have to keep in mind. First is, if we can know the degree of combined leverage of any of the companies which is listed in the stock market, in BSE or NSE, then whenever in the reports we can know their percentage of sales, we can know what will be the change in the EPS. And EPS is important for us. Why EPS is important for us? After considering these equations of OL, degree of OL, financial leverage, degree of financial leverage, combined leverage and degree of combined leverage. So the degree of combined leverage, if a company is given, let's say we have calculated the value is coming as 4 and the percentage change in sales is 20%. So we can know what will be the increase or change in the earnings per share, because the earnings per share belongs to the equity shareholders of the company, who are the owners of the company. So they need to know that what will be the impact of the change in sales on the EPS. That is one of the reasons of knowing or calculating this combined leverage. Because if we see this EPS of a company, let us say the EPS of a company is coming to rupees 10. Then out of this EPS, there are going to be two parts. One part is the dividend payout. So in the dividend payout, there are models like Walter model, Gordon model and Modigliani Miller, which talks of the dividend policy. Now this dividend payout is given as 1 minus B. So a company has a policy that it will pay 40% dividend. So this 1 minus B is 40 and getting rupees 4. The other component is the retained earnings of the company, retained earnings or retention ratio. So this retained earning is given as B, which is 60%, which is rupees 6. So as we can see, if the EPS of the company increases, and how it is going to increase, it is depending, again we have seen on the combined leverage and the change in sales, the dividend portion and the retained earnings both can increase. Now so 4 rupees being given as dividend. Dividend is always declared on face value of a share. So if the face value of our share is rupees 10, which is generally rupees 10 unless and until the market value of the share goes up to such an extent that the company has to break up this face value into lower values of say rupees 5, rupee 2 and rupee 1, which is known as a stock split, which many companies do in order to bring down the market price so that there is more liquidity and marketability in the market. So if the face value is rupees 10 and we are giving rupees 4 as dividend on this face value of rupees 10, it means we are giving 40% dividend. And what about this rupees 6 or 60%? This is retained earnings, which is also known as plowing back of profit and leads to growth. The growth of the company, which is G, is calculated as this B into ROE, that is the return on equity. And also this EPS is used to calculate the P ratio, the price earnings ratio. So P ratio or the price earning ratio is the market price of the share by the earnings per share. In the equity market, the P ratio is a yardstick, is a fundamental measure of measuring the various companies, whether in FMCG sector, automobile sector, IT sector, the P ratio is a yardstick which we are getting from here. So That is why the EPS is dependent on how we have designed our capital structure as well as on the sales value. Because from sales, if we deduct the variable cost, you are going to get contribution. From contribution, we deduct fixed cost, we will get EBIT. From EBIT, if we deduct interest, we will get the EBT. So the values are coming from there. So I have already said that we are going to use in the equation contribution, EBIT, EBT. But from where do we get these values? Before we move further into how this financial leverage is helping the equity shareholders. But it is a double-edged sword. We'll have to remember a chart in order to calculate these leverages or get this information about contribution, about EBT, about EBIT, about EPS. So what is the chart that we have to follow in order to calculate? That is, first we know we get sales. Sales means selling price into quantity. From that we deduct the variable cost, which is variable cost into quantity. So once we deduct, we are going to get the contribution. And we have just now seen that in case of operating leverage, the contribution is there. So from contribution, if we deduct fixed cost, we are going to get the earnings before interest and taxes, EBIT, less interest on bond or a debenture, we are going to get the EBT, earnings before tax, less the corporate taxes, we are going to get the PAT, profit after tax. This PAT belongs to, first, the preference shareholders. So out of this PAT, we have to first pay the preference dividend. So out of this preference dividend, the balance that remains belongs to the equity shareholders. This belongs to the equity shareholders. So this, if we divide by the number of equity shares, we are going to get this EPS value, earnings per share. So the leverage equations, the numerator or the denominator value as required, we can get from this particular chart. Now, we can have various combinations of operating leverage as well as financial leverage for a company. Now, which combination is the best and beneficial for any company? There can be 4 sets of combination. That is operating leverage and the financial leverage. Both can be low, both can be high. Or operating leverage, it can be high, financial leverage can be low, and the fourth option is operating leverage is low, financial leverage is high. If a company sticks to the first one, that is both are low, then it is losing out the advantage of utilizing leverage to magnify its earnings. So we are not going for that. If both are high, then it is very risky, because one side your operating leverage is high, which is an indicator of high business risk. On the other side, the financial leverage is also very high, which is an indicator of financial risk. The third option, if operating leverage is high, the business risk is high. As a result, we are not going to take advantage of the financial leverage, so losing out on that. So the best option is the fourth option, under which we can see that if the operating leverage is low, it gives stability to the company because the business risk is less, and the financial leverage is high, and we can take advantage of the leverage. So let us take up an example to see how the financial leverage can increase the earnings of the equity shareholders. But leverage is a double-edged sword. In certain year, if the sales revenue of the company is falling, then you have to continue making payment to the debenture holders. And as a result, the earnings of the equity shareholders will going to fall. You can take up an example with two companies. Let's say company A and company B. So there are two companies which are there. Both the companies are having same value of the EBIT. Let us say both the companies are earning same EBIT of 1 lakh rupees. So both the companies are having a same value of earning of 1 lakh EBIT. And their capital structure is slightly different. So what is the capital structure of these two companies? In case of the first company, company A, they have employed equity share capital of face value rupees 10, 50,000. Company B has 30,000. The second source of finance for company A is 10% pref share capital, which they have employed 20, and this company has also employed 20. And the third is 12% debenture, which is in their case 30,000 and in their case it is 50,000. So both the companies, as we can see, have same amount of capital, which is 1 lakh rupees. But their capital structures are different. So if you see the debt equity ratio, in case of company B, they have 50,000 debt and 30,000 equity. So debt equity ratio is more than 1, or the capital gearing. In case of company A, the debt is 30,000, equity is 50,000. So it is less than 1. So whose EPS is going to be more? Because company B is employing the financial leverage, we will see that company's B EPS is going to be more. Let's calculate this for both the companies. Company A, company B. So first, we are starting off with the EBIT. So EBIT for both the company is 1 lakh. So the first thing we are going to deduct from this is the debenture interest. So less interest, which is in case of company A, 12% of 30,000, which is 3,600. Company B, 12% of 50,000, which is 6,000. So from here, we are going to get the value of EBT, which is earnings before tax, less tax, which is 50%. So it is 48,200. In this case, it is 47,000. So after this, we are going to get the profit after tax PAT, which is 48,200 and 47,000. Less, we should pay preference dividend. So less pref dividend, which in both the cases is 10% of 20,000, which is 2,000. 2,000. So it is 46,200, 45,000. Now this value is actually the earnings which is available to the equity shareholders. Now because the face value of the share is rupees 10, in case of company A, they are having 5,000 equity shares. In case of company B, they are having 3,000 equity shares. So if I divide by the number of equity shares, which is 5,000, and the number of equity shares, which is 3,000, we can calculate the earnings per share, EPS. So EPS in case of company A is 9.24, and in case of company B, the EPS is rupees 15. So naturally, company B has a higher EPS. And you have seen that out of the EPS, there are two parts. One part is DPS, the other part is retained earning. So in case of company B, that is higher. So that is how financial leverage, that is having a higher component of debt, bond in the capital structure, because we have to pay a fixed rate of interest on them every year, which is 12%, we can magnify the EPS, which is the earnings of the equity shareholder. But the leverage are a double-edged sword. The reason being, in the next year, if the sales falls, as a result, this EBIT continues to fall, we see that company B has to make more amount of interest compared to company A. As a result, it has to continue paying off this particular amount of interest. That is where the risk is there in the case of the financial leverage. But both operating leverage and financial leverage, the objective of the leverage is that to employ the fixed cost which is there in order to magnify the earnings of the company. Now, because I've just now mentioned that out of the EPS there are two parts. One part is the dividend per share, the other part is retained earnings. Dividend of a company can be of three types. The first type, which we all know, is known as the cash dividend, which is credited to the account of the shareholder. This cash dividend can be given within the year, which is interim dividend, and at the end of the financial year, which is final dividend. The second type of dividend, which is very popular in case of IT companies because they have huge reserves and surpluses, is to issue bonus shares, which is also a type of dividend. In that case, what happens? We don't have to pay any price, we get the shares free. Let's think in this way, that the face value of a share is rupees 10 and the market price of the share is rupees 200. Now the company declares a bonus issue 1:1. That is, for every share that we are having, we'll get one share free, which is called capitalization of the reserves. So naturally, because of the supply increasing in the equity market, the share price will fall. That means I am having face value rupees 10, now 2 shares, and say the market price drops to rupees 95 or 96. Earlier I had only one share. So that is one of the way in which many IT companies which are listed in the BSE and NSE gives bonus shares to the shareholders. So this is the first type of dividend. This is the second type of dividend. The third type of dividend is known as stock split. Now what is stock split? Yes. This is the third type. What happens? Generally the face value of any company is rupees 10. But whenever the market price of the company increases over a period of time, it becomes difficult and expensive for the retail shareholders to participate and buy the shares. Retail shareholders means anyone having an investment up to rupees 2 lakh in a particular equity scrip. So in this way, if the face value of a share is rupees 10 and the market price is rupees 1500, the company can do what? It can make it to be 2 shares of face value rupees 5. So automatically the market price of the company drops, let's say to 780. But earlier I had only 1 share, now I have got 2 shares. So if I multiply 2 into 780, the value is coming to 1560. This is one of the options. So let's say this is option A. Option B is company makes this face value 5 shares of face value rupees 2. So automatically, instead of 1 share there are now 5, the market price, let's say, drops to 290. But now I have 5 shares, so 290 into 5. That means the value is actually 1450 if I compare this with this, this with this. And the third option is the company can make these 10 shares of face value rupees 2, rupees 1, rupees 1, and automatically the price is going to fall to rupees 145 or 146, but into 10, 1450. So these are the 3 forms which are there in which a company can also declare the dividend.